Mom died in her sleep, my husband announced, his voice carrying that practiced tremor of grief I'd come to recognize. I was watching from the closet as she died, my hand pressed against my mouth to muffle any sound, my body rigid against the hanging coats that concealed me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Through the sliver of space between the closet doors, I watched Marcus lean over his mother's still form, checking her pulse with fingers that had, moments before, pressed a pillow over her face. The bedroom was dim, lit only by the hallway light, spilling through the open door, but I'd seen everything, every second of those final 3 minutes. "Eleanor?" Marcus called out, louder now, performing for an audience he didn't know existed. "Eleanor, can you come here? Something's wrong with Mom." I remained frozen in place, my mind racing through the implications of what I'd just witnessed. How do you respond when your husband calls you to see a body he's just created? How do you walk into that room and pretend shock at finding your mother-in-law dead when you'd watched him murder her? The closet smelled of mothballs and lavender sachets, Dorothy's signature scent that permeated everything she owned. She'd been staying with us for 3 months now, recovering from hip surgery, and Marcus had grown increasingly agitated with each passing week. The inheritance talks, the arguments about her will, the way he'd started checking her medication schedule obsessively. I should have seen this coming. "Eleanor." His voice was sharper now, tinged with the impatience that always lurked beneath his carefully constructed exterior. "Where are you?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I forced myself to move, sliding the closet, door open just enough to slip out. My bare feet made no sound on the hardwood floor as I crept to the bedroom door, then deliberately walked heavily down the hallway, as if I'd been coming from the kitchen. "What's wrong?" I called out, proud of how normal my voice sounded despite the trembling in my hands. "It's Mom," Marcus said as I entered the room. He was sitting on the edge of her bed now, one hand on her shoulder, the perfect picture of a grieving son. "I came to check on her, and I think she's gone." I moved to the opposite side of the bed, forcing myself to look at Dorothy's face. Her eyes were closed, but there was something in the set of her features, a tension that hadn't quite faded. The pillow beside her head was slightly askew, and I noticed the faint imprint of fingers on its edge. "Oh, Marcus," I whispered, reaching across to touch his hand. His skin was clammy, adrenaline still coursing through him despite his calm facade. "Should I call 911? "Yes," he said, then quickly added, "No, wait. What's the point? She's already gone. We should call her doctor first. Dr. Patel. He'll know what to do." I nodded, playing my part while my mind cataloged every detail. The way Marcus kept adjusting the pillow, smoothing out wrinkles that weren't there. The slight redness around Dorothy's nose and mouth. The way her nightgown was twisted, as if there had been a struggle. "She's been so tired lately," Marcus continued, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality. "Yesterday she could barely stay awake through dinner. I should have known something was wrong." Yesterday, Dorothy had been perfectly fine. We'd spent the afternoon going through photo albums, her mind sharp as ever as she told me stories about Marcus's childhood. She'd even mentioned updating her will again, wanting to add a provision for her nurse's daughter's college fund. Marcus had been in the study, but I'd seen his shadow pause outside the door when she'd said it. "I'll get Dr. Patel's number," I said, standing up slowly. My legs felt disconnected from my body, operating on automatic pilot while my mind reeled. "It's in Mom's address book," Marcus said, "in the kitchen drawer." As I left the room, I heard him murmuring to his mother's body, playing the role of the devastated son. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have been here. I should have checked on you sooner." In the kitchen, I gripped the edge of the counter, allowing myself 30 seconds to process what I'd witnessed. I'd been in Dorothy's room returning the book I'd borrowed, planning to leave it on her nightstand as a surprise. The closet door had been ajar, and I'd heard Marcus's footsteps in the hallway. Something, instinct perhaps, or the furtive quality of his movements, had made me step inside and pull the door almost closed, I quote. Dee watched him enter the room, moving with deliberate quiet. Watched him stand over his sleeping mother for a long moment before picking up the pillow. Watched him press it down over her face as she stirred, then struggled, then went still. The address book was exactly where Marcus had said it would be. Dorothy's neat handwriting listing Dr. Patel's home and office numbers. I stared at the page, knowing that once I made this call, there would be no going back. The machinery of death would begin. Doctors, funeral directors, family notifications. And through it all, I would have to pretend I hadn't seen my husband commit murder. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Laura. Still on for lunch tomorrow? The normalcy of it almost made me laugh. Tomorrow, I would be planning a funeral for a woman who should have lived another decade. Tomorrow, I would be comforting a murderer, accepting condolences on behalf of a man who'd snuffed out his own mother's life for money. I typed back, might need to cancel. Family emergency. Then I dialed Dr. Patel's number, each digit feeling like another step into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Dr. Patel? I said when he answered, his voice thick with sleep. This is Eleanor Winters. I'm so sorry to call this late, but it's about Dorothy, Marcus's mother. We think she's passed away. As I spoke the words that would officially begin the charade, I thought about Dorothy's last moments. Had she known it was her son holding the pillow? Had she felt betrayed in those final seconds, or had unconsciousness claimed her before the truth could register? I'll be there within the hour, Dr. Patel was saying. Don't move her. I know this is difficult, but try to leave everything as it is. Of course, I agreed, though I'd already seen Marcus adjusting things, setting his stage. When I returned to the bedroom, Marcus had turned on the bedside lamp. In its soft glow, Dorothy looked almost peaceful, if you didn't know what to look for, but I did know. I saw the slight discoloration around her lips, the unnatural angle of her neck, the way her hands were positioned too perfectly on top of the covers. He's on his way, I told Marcus, who nodded solemnly. We should call Jonathan, he said, referring to his younger brother who lived in Seattle. And Aunt Miriam. They'll want to know right away. Maybe we should wait until morning, I suggested. It's after midnight there. Marcus shook his head. No, they'd never forgive me if I waited. You know how close John was to Mom. Was. Already she'd been relegated to past tense, a life reduced to history in the span of minutes. I watched Marcus pull out his phone, preparing his performance for a wider audience. The grieving son, shocked by sudden loss, burdened with the responsibility of breaking terrible news. John. Marcus's voice cracked perfectly on his brother's name. John, I need you to sit down. It's Mom. I stepped into the hallway, unable to watch him perform. My own phone was buzzing with messages from Laura, sensing something wrong in my cryptic response. But I couldn't answer her. Not yet. Not until I figured out what I was going to do with what I knew. The guest bathroom door was closed, and I slipped inside, locking it behind me. In the harsh fluorescent light, I looked like a stranger in the mirror. Same auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail, same green eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, same spray of freckles across my nose. But everything had changed in those 3 minutes in the closet. I was now the keeper of the worst kind of secret. The witness to a murder that would never be classified as such. Dorothy would be cremated. Marcus had always insisted that's what she wanted, though I'd never heard her express a preference. The evidence would turn to ash, and life would go on. Marcus would inherit everything, just as he'd planned. A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Eleanor? You okay in there?" Marcus's voice was gentle, concerned. The perfect husband checking on his distraught wife. "Just needed a moment," I called back, flushing the toilet for show and running the water in the sink. I measured coffee grounds into the filter, my movements mechanical and precise. Dorothy had taught me her secret to perfect coffee, a pinch of salt to cut the bitterness, just like her grandmother used to do. She'd shared so many stories, so many family recipes and traditions. All of it would die with her now, except for what lived on in my memory. The coffee maker gurgled to life, and I heard car doors slamming outside. Dr. Patel had arrived, and with him, the official beginning of the cover-up. Soon the house would fill with people, the medical examiner, the funeral home staff, family members arriving on red-eye flights, and through it all, I would have to play my part. The supportive wife, the grieving daughter-in-law, the woman who knew nothing. Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Dr. Patel is here. He's examining her now." He paused, studying my face. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "It's just the shock," I said, which was true enough. Dorothy was like a mother to me. Something flickered across his face, annoyance? Jealousy? It was gone too quickly to identify. "She loved you too," he said. "She told me just last week how grateful she was that I'd found someone like you." Last week, when she'd also told him she was thinking of changing her will to leave more money to charity. Last week, when they'd had that argument about her financial advisor, voices raised loud enough that I'd heard them from the garden. Last week, when Marcus had started researching nursing homes, printing out brochures he'd left conspicuously on the kitchen counter. "I should go speak with Dr. Patel," Marcus said. "Will you call Henderson's funeral home? Mom had pre-arrangements. There?" Of course she did. Dorothy had been nothing if not organized, everything planned and paid for in advance. She'd shown me the folder just last month, making sure I knew where to find it, just in case. Had she sensed something? Some shift in the air that warned her of danger. "I'll take care of it," I promised, and Marcus squeezed my shoulder before heading back upstairs. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black and bitter, despite Dorothy's pinch of salt. The funeral home's number was in her folder, right where she'd shown me. As I dialed, I thought about all the things that folder contained. Not just funeral arrangements, but insurance policies, bank accounts, investment portfolios. The fortune Marcus had just murdered for Henderson's funeral home, a somber voice answered. "How may we assist you?" "This is Eleanor Winters," I began, the words feeling thick in my throat. "I need to report a death," as I provided the necessary information. I heard footsteps above, multiple sets now, Dr. Patel and Marcus moving around Dorothy's room. The ceiling creaked in familiar patterns, and I found myself tracking their movements, wondering what evidence might be disturbed with each step. "We'll send someone within the hour," the funeral director assured me. "Please accept our deepest condolences." I hung up and stood alone in Dorothy's kitchen, because it would always be her kitchen to me, no matter what the will said. The walls were covered with photos she'd collected over the years. Marcus and Jonathan as children, family vacations, holiday gatherings. In every picture, Dorothy's smile was bright and genuine. The matriarch who'd held her family together after her husband's death 10 years ago. Now that responsibility would fall to Marcus, the son who'd just suffocated her for her money. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. Dr. Patel stood on the porch, his face grave. Behind him, I could see an ambulance in the driveway, its lights off. No need for urgency now. "Mrs. Winters," he said gently, "I've completed my examination. Given Dorothy's age and recent health issues, I'm comfortable certifying this as a natural death. She appears to have passed peacefully in her sleep." "That's a comfort," I managed to say, the lie burning my throat. Marcus mentioned she'd been more tired than usual lately. Yes, I confirmed, hating myself for supporting Marcus's narrative. She's been sleeping more during the day. Dr. Patel nodded. Not uncommon after major surgery at her age. The body simply gives out sometimes. At least she was at home, surrounded by family who loved her. Family who killed her, I thought, but didn't say. The funeral home will be here soon, Dr. Patel continued. Is there anything else you need? Anyone I should call? We're managing, I said. Thank you for coming so quickly. He patted my arm kindly. Dorothy was a wonderful woman. She spoke very highly of you, you know. Said Marcus was lucky to have found you. After he left, I remained in the doorway, watching the ambulance pull away. No sirens, no investigation, no justice. Just a signature on a death certificate and a pass for murder. Eleanor? Marcus called from upstairs. Can you come here for a moment? I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like a betrayal of Dorothy's memory. Marcus was standing in the hallway outside his mother's room, the door now closed. I can't go back in there, he said, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he seemed genuinely affected. Could you gather some clothes for her? For the funeral home? Of course, I said, though the thought of choosing Dorothy's final outfit while knowing how she died made me feel sick. Marcus pulled me into another embrace. I don't know what I'd do without you, he repeated, and this time I heard the edge in his voice. Not gratitude, but warning. Did he suspect what I knew? Was this his way of reminding me of my place? My role in his carefully constructed life? We'll get through this together, I said, the expected response of a supportive wife. As he headed downstairs to wait for the funeral home, I entered Dorothy's room alone. The bedside lamp was still on, casting shadows that seemed to move in my peripheral vision. The pillow, that damning pillow, had been placed carefully back in its proper position, fluffed and innocent-looking. I opened Dorothy's closet, breathing in that familiar scent of lavender and memories. Her clothes were organized by color, just as she'd liked them. The navy dress she'd worn to her 80th birthday party, the green suit she'd bought for Jonathan's wedding, the pearl gray outfit she'd shown me last week, saying she wanted to wear it to the charity gala next month, when she'd planned to be alive. I selected the pearl gray outfit, knowing she'd approve of the choice. As I laid it carefully on the chair, I noticed something on her dresser, a notepad with her handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked it up, recognizing the notes she'd been making about her will changes. At the bottom, in her careful script, discuss with Eleanor tomorrow. She'll understand what's best. Tomorrow had become today, and Dorothy would never have that discussion with me. But perhaps she'd left me something else, a trail of breadcrumbs, evidence of her concerns about Marcus. The thought gave me a spark of hope. If I could find proof that Dorothy had been worried about her son, maybe it would be enough to prompt an investigation. The doorbell rang again, and I heard Marcus greeting the funeral home staff. Time was running out. Soon Dorothy's body would be removed, taking with it any physical evidence of the crime. But her room remained, and somewhere in this space might be the key to exposing what Marcus had done. I quickly folded the outfit and placed Dorothy's favorite pearl necklace on top. Then, while I could hear voices and footsteps on the stairs, I photographed the notepad page with my phone. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Mrs. Winters? A gentle voice from the doorway. A woman from the funeral home. We're ready when you are. I nodded, handing her the clothes. These were her favorites. As they prepared to take Dorothy away, I stood in the hallway with Marcus, playing my role one more time. His hand found mine, squeezing too tightly, and I wondered if he could feel the truth pulsing between us like a heartbeat. It's really happening, he said softly. She's really gone. Yes, I agreed, looking him directly in the eyes. She's gone. But I silently promised Dorothy, as they carried her away from the home, she'd loved, that she would not be forgotten. And her murder would not go unpunished. I just had to figure out how to prove it without becoming Marcus's next victim. The next morning arrived like a hangover, disorienting, painful, and impossible to ignore. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night replaying those 3 minutes in the closet, searching for details I might have missed. Marcus had slept soundly beside me, his breathing deep and even, the sleep of the innocent or the exhausted. I couldn't decide which was more disturbing. By 6 a.m., I gave up pretending and slipped out of bed. The house felt different now, as if Dorothy's absence had changed the molecular structure of the air. Her door remained closed, the room beyond, it now a crime scene that no one but me recognized as such. In the kitchen, I found Marcus already awake, sitting at the table with his laptop open. He looked up when I entered, his eyes red-rimmed but alert. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, gesturing to the coffee pot. I made a fresh pot. I poured myself a cup, noting that he'd used the regular coffee, not Dorothy's special blend, already erasing her from the small details. "I've been making arrangements," he continued, turning his laptop screen toward me. "The obituary, the service details. John's flying in this afternoon with his family. Miriam arrives tonight." I scanned the obituary draft, each word a lie by omission. Dorothy Marie Winters, 82, passed away peacefully in her sleep. Peacefully. The word stuck in my throat like broken glass. "It's beautiful," I managed to say. She would have liked the part about her charity work. I pulled most of it from the bio she wrote for the hospital foundation, Marcus said. Always prepared for everything, wasn't she? Except for her son murdering her. She hadn't prepared for that. "I need to go to her bank," Marcus continued, closing the laptop. "They'll need the death certificate to start processing the estate. Would you mind staying here for the funeral home? They're coming by to discuss the service arrangements." My pulse quickened. Him leaving meant opportunity. "Of course. What time are they coming?" 10 o'clock. I should be back by then, but just in case." He stood, kissing the top of my head. "Thank you for handling everything so well. I know some wives would fall apart, but you're being so strong." After he left, I waited a full 10 minutes before moving, listening for any sign of his return. Then I headed straight for Dorothy's room. The funeral home had been efficient. The bed stripped, the medical equipment removed. But the essence of Dorothy remained in everything else. I started with her desk, careful to photograph everything before touching it. Bills, correspondence, medical records, all neatly filed in color-coded folders. In the bottom drawer, I found what I was looking for. A leather journal, its pages filled with Dorothy's careful handwriting. The entries went back 6 months, chronicling her recovery from surgery, her gratitude for our care, her observations about daily life. But as I read forward, the tone began to change. October 3rd. Marcus seemed upset about the conversation with Harold, her financial advisor. I only wanted to increase the charitable donations, but he acted as if I was giving away his inheritance. Need to remember that the money is still mine to distribute as I see fit. October 15th. Strange mood in the house lately. M keeps asking about my medications, checking if I've taken them. Almost feels like he's hoping I'll forget. Perhaps I'm being paranoid, but something feels off. October 22nd. Overheard M on the phone discussing my declining mental state. I've never felt sharper. Who was he talking to? And why lie about my condition? The entries became more sporadic after that, but each one documented small concerns, tiny red flags that together painted a picture of a woman growing increasingly wary of her son. The final entry was dated just 3 days ago, October 28th. Decided to definitely change the will. Leaving everything to Marcus no longer feels right. He's become someone I don't recognize. We'll call Harold tomorrow. Should probably tell Eleanor. My concerns, just in case. She's the only one I trust completely now. I photographed each page, my hands shaking. Here was Dorothy's voice from beyond the grave, documenting her killer's escalating behavior. But would it be enough? A car door slammed outside, making me jump. But it was just the neighbor, not Marcus, returning early. Still, I couldn't risk being caught in here. I carefully returned the journal to its exact position and moved to search the closet where I'd hidden last night. Behind Dorothy's neatly hung clothes, I found a small safe I'd never noticed before. The digital lock stared at me mockingly. I tried obvious combinations, birthdays, anniversaries, but nothing worked. Then, on impulse, I tried the date of her husband's death. The lock clicked open. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Not just the original will leaving everything to Marcus and Jonathan, but a draft of a new will dated last week. In it, Dorothy had reduced Marcus's inheritance by half, with the rest going to various charities and a trust fund for Jonathan's children. There was also a letter in Dorothy's handwriting, to whom it may concern. If you are reading this, something has happened to me. I've become increasingly concerned about my son Marcus's behavior regarding my estate. He has made comments that frighten me, and I fear what he might do if he learns of my intention to change my will. I am of sound mind as I write this, whatever he may claim. I've scheduled an appointment with my lawyer for November 2nd to formalize these changes. If something happens to me before then, please investigate thoroughly. Dorothy M. Winters, October 27, 2024, November 2nd. 5 days from now. She'd been so close to protecting herself. I photographed everything, then carefully returned the documents to the safe. But I took one thing, a USB drive labeled security footage. My heart raced as I pocketed it. Dorothy had installed security cameras after a break-in scare last year. Had she been recording her interactions with Marcus? The doorbell rang, making me almost drop the safe door. 10 a.m., the funeral home representatives. I quickly ensured. Everything looked undisturbed and hurried downstairs. 2. Somber individuals in dark suits stood on the porch. Mrs. Winters, we're here from Henderson's to discuss the service arrangements. I led them to the living room, my mind still spinning from my discoveries. As they spread out brochures and forms, I forced myself to focus on the immediate task. Mr. Winters indicated his mother wanted a traditional service, the woman said. We have several packages available. As she droned on about casket options and flower arrangements, I found myself thinking about Dorothy's real wishes. She'd told me once that she wanted a celebration of life, not a somber funeral. Music and laughter, not tears and eulogies. But Marcus was crafting the narrative now, creating the mother he wished he'd had rather than honoring the one he'd killed. The viewing could be Thursday evening, the man suggested, with the service Friday morning. This would give family time to arrive. That sounds appropriate, I agreed, signing papers I barely read. My mind was on the USB drive in my pocket, burning like a coal against my hip. After they left, I retreated to my home office, the one room in the house that was truly mine. Marcus rarely entered here, dismissing my freelance graphic design work as a hobby, despite it bringing in decent income. I locked the door and inserted the USB drive with trembling fingers. The drive contained dozens of video files, organized by date. I scrolled to the most recent ones, my heart pounding. Most showed mundane activities. Dorothy reading in her chair, the hallway empty at night, the occasional visit from her physical therapist. Then I found it. October 26th, 11:47 p.m. The hallway camera had captured Marcus standing outside Dorothy's room, just standing there for nearly 5 minutes. His face was partially visible, and the expression made my blood run cold, calculating, predatory, patient. I checked the next night's footage. October 27th showed nothing unusual, but I noticed a gap in the recordings, 2 hours of footage missing from the early morning hours. Marcus must have known about the cameras after all. But he'd missed 1. A second folder on the drive contained footage from a hidden camera I hadn't known existed. The timestamp showed October 26th, 3 p.m. Dorothy's bedroom. She was sitting at her desk, speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching this, something has happened to me. I've installed this extra camera because I no longer feel safe in my own home. My son Marcus has become increasingly aggressive about my money, and I fear what he might do when he learns I'm changing my will. I'm recording this as insurance, praying I'll never need it. She held up documents, the same ones I'd found in the safe. These are copies of my new will and a letter explaining my concerns. The originals are with my lawyer, Harold Fitzgerald. If anything happens to me, please ensure he's contacted immediately. The video continued for another 10 minutes, Dorothy detailing specific incidents. Marcus researching untraceable poisons on his computer, which he didn't know she could see from her chair's angle. Mysterious illnesses after meals he prepared. His increasing questions about her life insurance policies. I saved copies of everything to my cloud storage, encrypted and password protected. Then I faced a crucial decision. What to do with this evidence? The logical choice was to go to the police immediately. But something held me back. The same instinct that had made me hide in that closet instead of confronting Marcus directly. He'd already killed once. If he suspected I knew the truth, would I be next? My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Running late. Can you pick up John from the airport? Flight lands at 3:30. Jonathan, Dorothy's younger son, the one who'd moved. Across the country partly to escape his brother's shadow. He needed to know the truth, but how could I tell him? Hey, John, welcome home. By the way, your brother murdered your mother last night, and I have it all on video. I texted back my agreement, then made a decision. I would pick up Jonathan, but first I needed insurance of my own. I drove to my bank and rented a safety deposit box, storing copies of all the evidence along with my own written account of what I'd witnessed. Then I mailed a sealed envelope to my sister Laura with instructions not to open it unless something happened to me. By the time I reached the airport, I'd formulated a plan. I couldn't go to the police yet, not with family arriving, not with the funeral to plan, not without ensuring my own safety first. But I could start planting seeds of doubt, raising questions that might lead to a proper investigation. Jonathan emerged from the terminal looking exhausted, his wife Beth and their 2 teenagers trailing behind. The moment he saw me, his face crumpled. Eleanor, he said, pulling me into a hug. How's Marcus holding up? This must be such a shock. He's managing, I said carefully, though your mother's death was unexpected. Something in my tone must have caught his attention. John pulled back, studying my face. Unexpected how? Marcus said she'd been declining. Had she seemed declined to you? I asked. During your video calls? John frowned. No, actually. She seemed better than she had in months. We talked just 2 days ago about her coming to visit for Christmas. Beth leaned in. She was even talking about taking a cruise in the spring, said she felt like she had a new lease on life after the surgery. I nodded, filing this information away. She was making a lot of plans. As we loaded their luggage into my car, John's 15-year-old daughter Melissa asked, "Why didn't Dad get to say goodbye? Grandma always called him on Sunday nights." She passed in her sleep, I said, the lie tasting bitter. Very peacefully. But she didn't call last night, Melissa persisted. Dad waited up until midnight. The car fell silent. Dorothy never missed those Sunday calls, not even when she'd been in the hospital after surgery. It was another break-in. Pattern, another red flag that would have warned her younger son if he'd only known to look for danger. As I drove them home, John peppered me with questions about Dorothy's final days. Each one felt like an opportunity to plant seeds of doubt without revealing what I knew. Had she seen her doctor recently? He asked. 2 weeks ago. Clean bill of health, actually. Dr. Patel was pleased with her recovery. And her spirits? High. She'd been talking about updating her will, wanting to set up education funds for the kids. John and Beth exchanged glances in the rearview mirror. She mentioned that to us too, Beth said slowly. Said she wanted to make sure her money did some good in the world. Marcus must have loved that idea, John said. And there was an edge to his voice that made me wonder how much he suspected about his brother's character. You know Marcus, I said neutrally. He has strong opinions about family assets. The rest of the drive passed in heavy silence. When we reached the house, Marcus's car was in the driveway. He emerged as we pulled up, his grieving son mask firmly in place. John, he called out, arms spread wide. I'm so sorry you had to find out like this. The brothers embraced, but I noticed John's stiffness, the way he pulled back quickly. We need to talk, John said quietly. About Mom, about everything. Of course, Marcus agreed, but his eyes found mine over John's shoulder. There was a question, in them, or maybe a warning. As the family headed inside, I hung back, pretending to check my phone. But really, I was thinking about Dorothy's videos, her journal, her fear. She'd known what her son was capable of, had tried to protect herself. But in the end, love, or perhaps the inability to fully believe a child could harm their parent, had made her vulnerable. I wouldn't make the same mistake. Inside, Marcus was already controlling the narrative, telling John and Beth about Dorothy's recent decline, her confusion about medications, her increasing frailty. Each lie was carefully crafted to support the story of a natural death, an elderly woman whose time had simply come. But John wasn't buying it entirely. I'd like to see her room, he said suddenly. If that's okay? Marcus hesitated just a fraction. Too long. Of course. Though we've already... That is the funeral home. I know she's not there, John said firmly. I just need to see where she spent her last days. I watched Marcus calculate his response, weighing the suspicion that denial would create against whatever evidence might remain in that room. Finally, he nodded. I'll take him, I offered. You should catch up with Beth and the kids. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he couldn't refuse without seeming odd. As John and I climbed the stairs, I felt Marcus's eyes boring into my back. Dorothy quote SC. Room looked sanitized. Nothing like the warm, lived-in space it had been just yesterday. John stood in the doorway for a long moment, then walked to the window where his mother's reading chair sat. She loved this spot, he said softly. Said she could see the whole garden from here. She spent hours here, I agreed. Reading, writing in her journal, watching the birds. John turned sharply. Her journal? She still kept one? My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. Yes, I think Marcus put it with her personal papers. I'd like to see it, John said. And any other writings she left. You know, for the eulogy. It was an opening, a chance to share what I'd found. But with Marcus just downstairs, the house full of family, it felt too dangerous. Instead, I said, I'll help you look for it later, when things are quieter. John nodded, but his eyes were troubled. He walked to Dorothy's dresser, running his fingers along its surface. Eleanor, can I ask you something? Of course. Was my mother afraid? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I chose my words carefully. She was concerned about some things, changes she wanted to make that not everyone supported. "The will?" John said. It wasn't a question. Among other things, John met my eyes in the mirror above the dresser. "We should talk more, privately, after the funeral." I nodded, relief flooding through me. I wasn't alone in my suspicions. But even as hope bloomed, I heard Marcus's footsteps on the stairs, his voice calling out cheerfully, "John? Eleanor? Aunt Miriam just arrived." The moment was broken. John squared his shoulders, preparing to face more family, more lies, more performance, of grief. But as we left Dorothy's room, he squeezed my shoulder. A silent promise that this wasn't over. The rest of the day passed in a blur of arriving relatives, delivered flowers, and casserole dishes from well-meaning neighbors. I played my part, accepting condolences, making sure everyone had what they needed, supporting my supposedly grief-stricken husband. But all the while, I was aware of the evidence hidden in my office, the USB drive now tucked inside an old makeup, compact in my purse, the safety deposit box key hidden in my wallet. I was sitting on a powder keg of truth, and the fuse was already lit. That night, as extended family filled our guest rooms and couches, Marcus and I finally found ourselves alone in our bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, loosening his tie, with movements that seemed suddenly menacing. "Long day," he said, watching me in the mirror as I removed my earrings. "The longest," I agreed. "John seems to be taking it hard." They were close. Marcus stood, moving behind me. His hands settled on my shoulders, and I fought not to flinch. He was asking a lot of questions about Mom's health, her state of mind. "It's natural," I said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "He's trying to understand." "There's nothing to understand," Marcus said, his fingers tightening slightly. "She was elderly. Her heart gave out. End of story." "Of course," I murmured. He leaned down, kissing the side of my neck. "I'm lucky to have you," he whispered. "Someone who understands. Someone who knows what's best for the family." The threat was subtle but clear. I smiled, playing the devoted wife one more time. "We're a team," I said. "Always." "Always," he repeated, and the word sounded like a prison sentence. Later, comma. As Marcus slept beside me, I lay awake planning. The funeral was in 3 days. 3 days to gather more evidence, to find allies, to ensure my own safety. 3 days to prepare for the moment when I would expose Marcus for what he was. A murderer who killed his own mother for money. Dorothy deserved justice. And I was going to make sure she got it, no matter the cost. But first, I had to survive the next 3 days. The second day dawned gray and drizzling, matching the mood that had settled over the house. I woke to find Marcus's side of the bed empty, the sheets cold. Through the bedroom door, I could hear voices downstairs, family members already gathering, the coffee maker working overtime, the strange energy that surrounds death bringing everyone together in forced intimacy. I dressed carefully, choosing a black sweater and slacks that would allow me to blend into the background. Today would require invisibility, the ability to move through the house unnoticed while gathering. What I needed. In the kitchen, I found Aunt Miriam holding court, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. She was regaling Beth and the teenagers with stories about Dorothy's younger days, each anecdote polished smooth by years of retelling. "Your grandmother was a force of nature," Miriam was saying. "Even in her 80s, sharp as a tack. Just last month she called me about her investment portfolio, had caught an error her broker missed." "Where's Marcus?" I asked, pouring coffee with hands steadier than they had any right to be. "He left early," Beth replied. "Said he had to meet with the estate lawyer." My stomach tightened. Harold Fitzgerald, the same lawyer Dorothy had planned to meet in 3 days to change her will. Was Marcus moving to solidify his position before anyone could challenge it? "John went with him," Beth added, and I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps John would ask the right questions, notice the wrong things. Eleanor, dear. Miriam fixed me with eyes nearly as sharp as Dorothy's had been. How are you holding up? This must be such a shock. Dorothy seemed so well when I spoke to her last week. It's been difficult, I said truthfully. Everything happened so fast. Too fast, Miriam murmured, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. In my experience, when things happen too fast, it's worth slowing down to look closer. Our eyes met across the kitchen island, and I wondered if Dorothy had shared her concerns with her sister. Before I could probe further, Marcus's cousin Robert arrived with his family, and the moment was lost in a flurry of introductions and condolences. The morning passed in a maze of funeral preparations. Flowers arrived steadily, transforming the living room into a botanical garden. The doorbell rang constantly. Neighbors, Dorothy's bridge club, representatives from her various charities. Each visitor brought memories, stories of Dorothy's kindness, her sharp wit, her generosity. She gave me a job when no one else would, said Maria, who cleaned for Dorothy twice a week. Even paid for my daughter's dental work last year. Said it was a bonus, but I knew better. I documented everything, ostensibly for the eulogy, but really, building a portrait of the woman Marcus had murdered. Every story reinforced what I already knew. Dorothy had been vital, engaged, planning for a future she'd never see around noon. While the house buzzed with activity, I slipped away to my office. I needed to review the security footage again, looking for anything I'd missed. But when I opened my laptop, a chill ran down my spine. The browser history showed searches I hadn't made. How to delete cloud storage, accessing spouse's computer remotely, security camera blind spots. Marcus had been in my office. My hands trembling, I checked my cloud storage. Everything was still there, but now he knew I had something. The game had changed. He was hunting now, and I was the prey. I grabbed my laptop and the backup drives I'd hidden, shoving them into a tote bag along with printed copies of Dorothy's journal entries. If Marcus was searching for evidence, I couldn't leave anything here for him to find. Eleanor? John's voice from the doorway made me jump. He stood there, still in his suit from the lawyer's office, his face grim. We need to talk. I glanced, past him, checking for Marcus. Where is... He stopped at the funeral home. We have maybe 20 minutes. John closed the door behind him. The lawyer said something odd. Mom had called him 3 days ago, said she needed to see him urgently, about changing her will. He had her in the books for Friday. November 2nd, I said quietly. John quote. Eyes sharpened. You knew? I made a decision then, one that could save us both or doom us. I know a lot of things, but not here. Too many ears. My rental car is outside, John said immediately. Let's go for a drive. We slipped out through the back door, avoiding the crowd in the living room. As John drove through the rain-slicked streets, I told him everything. The journal, the will, the security footage, everything, except what I'd witnessed from the closet. That secret felt too dangerous to share. Even with him, John pulled into an empty parking lot, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Show me, he said simply. I pulled out my phone, showing him Dorothy's video testimony. John watched in silence, tears sliding down his cheeks as his mother's voice filled the car, documenting her fears about his brother. I knew something was wrong, he said when it ended. The way Marcus talked about her, like she was already gone. And at the lawyer's office today... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Harold mentioned that Marcus had been asking about power of attorney, about having Mom declared incompetent. Apparently, he'd been building a case for months. But Dorothy was sharp as ever, I protested. Which is why he had to act fast, John said grimly. Harold told Mom everything 3 days ago. That's why she called to urgently change the will. She knew time was running out. We sat in silence, rain pattering against the windshield. Finally, John spoke again. "We need to go to the police." "With what?" I asked. "A video of Dorothy saying she was scared. Journal entries expressing concern? It's all circumstantial. And Dr. Patel already signed the death certificate. Natural causes." "Then what do we do?" I thought about Marcus's searches on my computer, his growing suspicion. "We protect ourselves first, and we find more evidence. There has to be something we're missing." John started the car. "Beth doesn't know. I can't tell her, not yet. But I'll keep her and the kids close, make sure they're never alone with him." As we drove back, I shared my plan. There's a gap in the security footage from that night. 2 hours missing. Marcus must have deleted it, but deleted files can sometimes be recovered. I know someone who might help. Who? My sister's ex-boyfriend. Tommy. He does digital forensics for insurance companies. If anyone can recover those files, it's him. We were almost home when John asked the question I'd been dreading. "Eleanor, why were you looking for this evidence in the first place? What made you suspect Marcus?" I kept my eyes on the passing houses. "Dorothy asked me to, in case something happened. She trusted me to protect her interests." It wasn't exactly a lie, but John seemed to sense there was more. He didn't push, though. We were allies now, bound by shared suspicion and grief. Back at the house, we found Marcus in the driveway, unloading flowers from his car. His smile when he saw us was sharp as winter. "There you are," he said, his eyes moving between John and me. I was starting to worry. "Where did you go?" "Eleanor was showing me Mom's favorite coffee shop," John lied smoothly. "Thought we'd get out of the chaos for a bit." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. "Find anything interesting?" "Just memories," I said, matching his casual tone. "Your mother was loved by a lot of people." "Yes," Marcus agreed, still watching us. "She certainly made an impression." Inside, the house had filled with more relatives. Marcus's attention was immediately claimed by arriving guests, but I felt his awareness tracking me as I moved through the rooms. Every interaction felt like a performance now, both of us playing our parts while hunting for the other's weakness. I found Miriam in Dorothy's room, standing by the window where Dorothy used to sit. "I shouldn't be in here," she said without turning. But I needed to feel close to her. "She loved this room," I offered, closing the door behind me. Miriam turned then, and her face was hard with an expression I recognized, suspicion sharpened by grief. "Did you know Dorothy called me last week? Said if anything happened to her, I should ask questions, push for an investigation." My heart raced. "What kind of questions?" "The kind a sister asks when she knows something's wrong." Miriam moved closer, lowering her voice. She was afraid of him, her own son. Said he'd changed, become someone she didn't recognize. Obsessed with money, with control. "Did she tell you anything specific?" Miriam reached into her purse, pulling out an envelope. "She mailed this to me 4 days ago. It arrived this morning." Inside was a handwritten letter in Dorothy's careful script. "My dear Miriam, if you're reading this, then my fears have come to pass. I've enclosed a key to a safety deposit box at First National, box 472. Inside you'll find documents that explain everything. I'm sorry to burden you with this, but I trust no one else to ensure justice is done. Marcus is not the son I raised. The man he's become is capable of terrible things. Please protect Eleanor. She's been my only comfort these past months, and I fear what Marcus might do if he suspects she knows the truth. All my love, Dorothy." My hands shook as I read. Dorothy had been one step ahead, even in her fear. "We need to get to that bank." "It's closed until tomorrow," Miriam said. "But first thing in the morning we're going together, and we're taking John." A knock at the door made us both jump. Beth peered in. Sorry to interrupt, but Marcus is looking for you, Eleanor. Something about the caterers. I folded the letter, handing it back to Miriam with a meaningful look. She nodded. Tucking it away. The rest of the afternoon was torture. I dealt with caterers, arranged photo displays, comforted grieving friends, all while feeling Marcus's eyes on me. He was always there in my peripheral vision, watching, calculating. Tommy texted me around 4. Can look at those files tonight. Send them over. I couldn't risk using the home computer, not after Marcus's searches. Instead, I excused myself to run errands and drove to a cyber cafe downtown. From there, I uploaded the security footage files to Tommy's secure server, praying he could recover what Marcus had deleted. When I returned home, I found Marcus in our bedroom, sitting on the bed with my jewelry box open in his lap. Looking for something? I asked, proud of how steady my voice sounded. He held up my pearl necklace, the one Dorothy had given me last Christmas. I thought Mom would want you to wear these to the funeral. They were her mother's. That's thoughtful, I said, though we both knew he hadn't been looking for jewelry. He stood, moving closer. Eleanor, is everything all right? You seem distant since Mom died. It's been hard, I said truthfully. I loved her. I know, he said, reaching out to brush my cheek. But we need to stick together now. Family is all we have. The threat was subtle but clear. I nodded, letting him fasten the pearls around my neck. In the mirror, they looked like a collar. That evening, with the house full of family, I felt paradoxically alone. John caught my eye occasionally, silent questions in his gaze. Miriam watched Marcus with barely concealed suspicion. Beth kept the children close, some instinct warning her of danger. After dinner, as people began settling for the night, my phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Found something? Call me ASAP, not on your home line. I slipped out to the garage, using the excuse of looking for extra blankets. From there, I called Tommy on my cell. Eleanor, this is bad, he said without preamble. I recovered the deleted footage. You need to see this, but not there. Can you get away? Not tonight. The house is full of family. Tomorrow, then. First thing. And Eleanor? Be careful. What's on this footage? Someone wanted it gone for a reason. After he hung up, I stood in the cold garage, surrounded by boxes of Christmas decorations Dorothy would never see. Tomorrow, Miriam and I would go to the bank. Tomorrow, Tommy would show me the recovered footage. Tomorrow, the evidence might finally be enough. But first, I had to survive tonight. When I returned to the house, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen, a glass of wine in each hand. Thought you might need this, he said, offering me one. You've been running yourself ragged taking care of everyone. I accepted the glass but didn't drink. Just wanting everything to be perfect for your mother. She would have appreciated that, he said, taking a sip of his own wine. You know, she told me once that marrying you was the best thing I ever did. She was kind. No, Marcus said, his voice dropping. She was right. You've been perfect, Eleanor. Supportive, discreet, never asking uncomfortable questions. The ideal wife. The kitchen suddenly felt very small. I should check on the guests. They're fine, Marcus said, moving closer. I want to talk about us. About our future. With Mom gone, things will change. The house will be ours. The money. We can finally live the life we deserve. Your mother isn't even buried yet, I said, unable to hide my disgust. His expression hardened. No, she's not. And there's a lot to do before she is. Paperwork to file, accounts to settle, loose ends to tie up. He paused, his eyes boring into mine. All kinds of loose ends. The threat was no longer subtle. I forced myself to meet his gaze. Then we'd better get some rest. Tomorrow we'll be busy. Yes, he agreed, but didn't move aside. Eleanor, you'd tell me if something was bothering you, wouldn't you? If someone was filling your head with ideas? Of course, I lied. Good. He finally stepped back, but his smile was cold. Because I'd hate for anything to come between us. Especially now, when we need each other most. I managed to make it to the bathroom before my hands started shaking. In the mirror, Dorothy's pearls gleamed against my throat like drops of blood. Tomorrow felt very far away. That night. I lay awake beside Marcus, feeling the weight of his arm across my waist like a shackle. Every time I shifted, his grip tightened. He wasn't asleep either. I could tell by his breathing, the careful way he held himself. We lay there in the dark, predator and prey sharing a bed, each waiting for the other to make a move. At 3 a.m., my phone vibrated with a text. I couldn't check it without waking Marcus, or at least alerting him that I was awake. So I waited, counting the minutes until dawn, planning my moves like a chess game where losing meant more than just the match. Dorothy had trusted me to seek justice. John and Miriam were counting on me. And somewhere in the digital either, Tommy had found something that Marcus had killed to keep hidden. The third day was coming, and with it, either justice or disaster. There would be no middle ground, no compromise. Marcus had made sure of that, when he pressed a pillow over his mother's face. As the first pale light of dawn crept through the curtains, I felt Marcus's breathing finally deepen into real sleep. Carefully, I reached for my phone. The text was from an unknown number, but the message made my blood run cold. Stop digging or join her. You have been warned. I deleted the message, my mind racing. Was it from Marcus? Or did he have help? Who else knew what I was doing? One thing was certain. I was running out of time. Today, I would either expose a murderer or become his next victim. Dorothy deserved justice. And I was going to get it for her, even if it killed me. The third day began before dawn. I slipped out of bed while Marcus still slept, or pretended to sleep, and made my way to the kitchen. The house was quiet, family members still lost in dreams, unaware of the danger moving through their midst like smoke. I made coffee with hands that barely trembled, running through my mental checklist. First, meet Miriam at the bank when it opened, at 9. Then to Tommy's to see the recovered footage. After that would depend on what we found. You're up early. John's voice made me spin around, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim of my cup. Couldn't sleep, I admitted, noting the dark circles under his own eyes. He poured himself coffee, then leaned against the counter, studying me. That text last night. You deleted it, but I saw your face when you read it. I'd forgotten John had been positioned where he could see me in the bedroom doorway. It was nothing. Eleanor. His voice carried the same authority Dorothy's used to when she knew someone was lying. We're past the point of protecting each other with ignorance. What did it say? I glanced toward the stairs, listening for movement. A warning to stop digging, or join your mother. John's face went pale, then flushed with anger. He threatened you? I don't know if it was him. The number was blocked. Who else would? John stopped, his eyes widening. Oh, God! He's not working alone. The possibility had occurred to me during the sleepless hours. Marcus was many things, but he wasn't tech-savvy enough to delete specific hours of security footage. Someone had helped him, someone who might still be helping. We need to be very careful today, I said. If he has an accomplice, then we're outnumbered. John set down his cup decisively. I'm coming with you and Miriam to the bank. Your family, Beth's taking the kids to the Children's Museum this morning. I already arranged it. They'll be in public, safe. He paused. I told her I needed to handle some estate matters with Aunt Miriam. Not a lie, exactly. Before I could respond, footsteps on the stairs sent us both into casual positions. Marcus appeared, already dressed in a dark suit, his hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Morning, he said, his eyes moving between John and me. Planning the day? Just coffee, John replied. Miriam wants to go through some of Mom's things, photos for the memorial display. That's thoughtful. Marcus poured his own coffee, movements deliberate and controlled. I have some errands to run this morning. Estate matters. Will you be all right here, Eleanor? The question was loaded with subtext. Actually, I promised to help Miriam with the photos. She's struggling. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. Family should stick together in times like these. He set down his cup. I should be back by 11. We'll need to leave for the funeral home at noon for the final arrangements. He kissed my cheek, his lips cold, his hand gripping my shoulder just a bit too tight. Be careful out there, he murmured. Grief can make people do unexpected things. After he left, John and I stood in silence until we heard his car pull away. He knows, John said flatly. He suspects, I corrected. There's a difference. Suspicion we can work with. Knowledge means we're already dead. At 8:45, Miriam arrived, dressed in severe black, but with a determined glint in her eye. Ready? She asked, though it wasn't really a question. John drove, taking a circuitous route to the bank while I watched for anyone following. The streets were busy with morning commuters, any one of whom could be Marcus's accomplice. Every car that stayed behind us for more than 2 turns made my heart race. First National Bank was an old stone building, solid and reassuring. We were the first customers through the door, Miriam marching straight to the manager's desk with Dorothy's key clutched in her hand. We need to access safety deposit box 472, she announced. Dorothy Winters was my sister. The process was frustratingly slow paperwork, Idaho verification, the manager's careful sympathy. But finally, we were led to the vault, the box retrieved and placed in a private viewing room. Miriam's hands shook as she inserted the key. Inside were documents that made us all catch our breath. A copy of Dorothy's original will, the new will she'd never gotten to sign. Bank statements showing large, unexplained withdrawals from her accounts over the past 6 months. And a series of photographs. What are these? John asked, spreading them across the table. The photos showed Marcus at various locations, restaurants, parking lots, even what looked like a medical office. In each one, he was with the same woman, a blonde in her 30s who looked vaguely familiar. That's Nicole Harrison, Miriam said slowly. She works at the bank. Dorothy mentioned her once, said she was always very helpful with her accounts. The pieces clicked into place. An inside accomplice with access to Dorothy's finances. Someone who could facilitate those withdrawals, who might know enough about technology to help with security footage. There's more, I said, pulling out a manila envelope at the bottom of the box. Inside was a small digital recorder and a note in Dorothy's handwriting. Recorded October 25th. Marcus doesn't know. John found an outlet and plugged in the recorder. Dorothy's voice filled the small room, shaky but determined. This is Dorothy Winters, making this recording of my own free will on October 25th, 2024. I've discovered that my son Marcus has been stealing from me with the help of a bank employee named Nicole Harrison. I confronted him tonight, and his response terrified me. He said, and I quote, "You should be more careful, Mom. Accidents happen to elderly people all the time. Bad medications, falls, sudden health issues. It would be tragic if something happened to you before you could cause trouble for anyone. I believe my life is in danger. If something happens to me, please investigate my son Marcus Winters for murder." The recording continued for another 10 minutes, Dorothy detailing the financial fraud, the threats, her fears. By the end, Miriam was crying silently, and John's fists were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. "This is it," he said. "This is enough for the police." "We need copies first," I insisted. "Everything. If Nicole is involved, She might have connections who could make this disappear. We spent the next half hour at the bank's copy machine, creating multiple sets of everything. Miriam kept the originals, John took a set, and I hid mine in my purse. As we prepared to leave, the bank manager approached. "Mrs. Winters? There's someone here asking about Dorothy's accounts. A Miss Harrison from our wealth management department." We froze. Through the glass partition, I could see the blonde from the photographs, her face anxious as she spoke to a teller. "Tell her we've already left," Miriam said smoothly, "and that all inquiries about my sister's estate should go through her attorney." We exited through a side door, John practically running to the car. As we pulled away, I saw Nicole Harrison, emerging from the bank, cell phone pressed to her ear. "Tommy's office," I directed John. "Quickly." Tommy worked out of a converted warehouse in the arts district, his digital forensics lab hidden behind the facade of a computer repair shop. He met us at the door, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by grim concern. "You all need to see this," he said, leading us to his workstation. "I recovered 2 hours of footage from October 28th, but I've got to warn you, it's hard to watch." The first recovered segment showed Marcus entering Dorothy's room at 11:47 p.m., just as I remembered. But there was audio this time. Dorothy's security system had included sound recording. "Marcus?" Dorothy's sleepy voice. "What are you doing?" "Just checking on you, Mom. Go back to sleep." "I told you I'm changing the will. It's done. You can't." "Stop me." "We'll see about that." The camera angle didn't show the bed clearly, but we could see Marcus's movements, hear Dorothy's sudden gasp, the sounds of struggle. My hand found John's, gripping tight as we watched Marcus murder his mother. But it was the second segment that truly chilled us. 20 minutes after the murder, another figure entered the room. Nicole Harrison, dressed in dark clothes, carrying what looked like medical equipment. "Did you do it?" Marcus's voice, calm now. "Injection site will look like an insulin mark," Nicole replied professionally. "The potassium chloride will be undetectable unless they specifically test for it. Even if they do, she was on heart medication. It'll look like an accident." "You didn't need to do that," Marcus said. "Suffocation would have worked. But this is cleaner, trust me. No signs of struggle, no petechiae, nothing suspicious. Just an elderly woman whose heart gave out." They spent another 10 minutes arranging the scene, discussing their story, planning the next steps. The casual nature of their conversation, as if they were discussing dinner plans rather than murder, made bile rise in my throat. "There's your accomplice," Tommy said quietly. "And there's your murder confession." "Why inject her if she was already dead?" Miriam asked, horrified. "Insurance," I realized. If anyone questioned the suffocation, the injection would provide an alternative cause of death. Nicole was his backup plan. John was already on his phone. "I'm calling the police. This ends now." "But," I grabbed his arm. "Wait, they're both still free. If we call now, they might run." "Or worse." "Worse?" Miriam asked. "Marcus knows I'm onto him. That text last night proved it. If he feels cornered..." I thought about the house full of family, about Beth and the kids returning from the museum. We need to be smart about this. Tommy pulled up another screen. "I've already backed up everything to multiple secure servers. Even if something happens to the physical evidence, the digital trail is preserved." "Good," I said, my mind racing. "Here's what we're going to do. Miriam, take your evidence to the police station. File a report, but ask them to wait until after the viewing tonight to act. John, you take Beth and the kids somewhere safe. A hotel, maybe." "What about you?" John asked. "I'm going back to the house. If I disappear now, Marcus will know we have him. I need to keep playing the grieving daughter-in-law for a few more hours." "That's insane," Miriam protested. "You'll be alone with a murderer." "The house is full of family. He won't try anything with witnesses around. I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt. Besides, someone needs to make sure he shows up at the viewing tonight. The police can arrest him there publicly with no chance of escape. It was a risk, but it was the best plan we had. Tommy gave me a flash drive with the footage, just in case. Miriam left for the police station with her copies of everything. John reluctantly agreed to my plan, but insisted on staying close. "I'll be at the house," he said. "If anything seems wrong, anything at all, you signal me." The drive back felt like traveling to my own execution. Every familiar street looked different now, tainted by the knowledge of what awaited me. As we pulled up to the house, I saw Marcus's car in the driveway. He was back early. "Be careful," John said, squeezing my hand. "Dorothy would never forgive me if I let something happen to you." Inside, I found Marcus in the study, papers spread across his desk. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Knowledge, perhaps, or resignation. "How were the photos?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Emotional." "Miriam found some lovely ones from Dorothy's childhood." "And that's all you found?" The question hung between us, heavy with implication. I forced myself to meet his gaze, steadily. "What else would we find, Marcus?" He stood slowly, coming around the desk. "I don't know, Eleanor. You tell me. You've been very busy these past few days. Very curious." "My mother-in-law just died." "Of course Your mother-in-law was murdered." The words hit like a physical blow. I took an involuntary step back, my hand finding the doorframe for support. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Shocked? You shouldn't be. After all, you watched from the closet." My blood turned to ice. He knew. Had known all along. "I saw you, he continued conversationally. "In the mirror on her dresser. Just a glimpse of movement in the closet. I thought I'd imagined it at first, but then you started your little investigation, and I knew—" "Marcus, the question is," he interrupted, moving closer, "what do we do now? You know what I did. I know that you know. It's quite the predicament." My mind raced, calculating distances to the door, to John in the next room, to my phone in my purse. But Marcus was between me and all of them. "You don't have to do this," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "We can figure something out." He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Figure what out? How to split Mom's money? How to keep you quiet? No, Eleanor, there's only one way this ends." "The police already know," I blurted out. "Miriam found evidence. They're coming." Marcus tilted his head, studying me. "Are they? Or is that just what you want me to think?" He pulled out his phone, showing me a tracking app. "Nicole is very thorough. She's been monitoring your phones, your emails, your movements. We know everywhere you've been today." My heart sank. They'd been one step ahead the entire time. "The viewing is in 3 hours," Marcus said, checking his watch. "Mother will be properly mourned. Everyone will cry and share memories, and then—" He shrugged. "Accidents happen. Grief makes people do terrible things. Maybe you'll take too many pills. Maybe you'll have a car accident on the way home. So many possibilities. People will suspect— Will they?" The grieving husband, shattered. By the loss of his mother and then his wife? I'll be inconsolable. His mask slipped for a moment, revealing the monster beneath, just like I was 3 days ago. A knock at the door interrupted whatever he was going to say next. John's voice called out, "Eleanor? You in there? Beth needs help with the kids." Marcus's eyes never left mine. "Answer him," he whispered. "Tell him you'll be right there." "I'll be right there, John," I called, amazed at how normal my voice sounded. "We're not done," Marcus murmured as I backed toward the door. "Tonight, after the viewing, one way or another, this ends." I fled the study, my legs barely carrying me to where John waited in the hallway. His face changed the moment he saw me. What happened? He knows, I whispered. He knows everything, and he's going to kill me. John's expression hardened. Not if I kill him first. No, I grabbed his arm. The police. Where are they? John demanded. Why aren't they here? I realized then that something had gone wrong. Miriam should have called by now. The police should have arrived. But the house remained full of oblivious family members preparing for a viewing that was becoming a trap. Call Miriam, I urged. Find out what's happening. I need to… Eleanor? Marcus appeared in the study doorway. We should get ready soon. Wouldn't want to be late for Mother's viewing. The way he said it, the casual tone underlaid with threat, made John step protectively in front of me. The brothers stared at each other, years of resentment and suspicion crystallizing in that moment. Is there a problem? Marcus asked mildly. Yes, John said. You. The mask finally dropped completely. Marcus's face transformed, the grieving son replaced by something cold and calculating. Be very careful, little brother. You have a family to think about. The threat against Beth and the kids was clear. John's fists clenched, but I touched his arm, holding him back. We should all get ready, I said, injecting false calm into my voice. Dorothy deserves a proper goodbye. Marcus smiled, knowing he'd won this round. Exactly. Mother deserves the best. As he walked away, John turned to me urgently. We can't go to that viewing. It's a trap. We have to, I insisted. If we run now, he wins. Dorothy's murder goes unpunished. But if we can just hold on until the police arrive… If they arrive, John corrected grimly. I thought about the evidence Tommy had backed up, the recordings Miriam had taken to the police, the digital trail we'd created. Somewhere in the city, the wheels of justice had to be turning dot. They had to be dot. Because if they weren't, then tonight's viewing would be more than just a farewell to Dorothy Dot. It would be mine as well. Dot, the Henderson funeral home, glowed softly in the evening light, its colonial facade welcoming mourners with practiced dignity. I sat in the parking lot with John, watching family members file in, each carrying their grief like a stone. In 30 minutes, Dorothy's viewing would begin. In 30 minutes, I would either see justice served or become Marcus's next victim. Miriam's. Here, John said, spotting his aunt's silver hair through the entrance doors. But I don't see any police. My phone buzzed, a text from Tommy. Package delivered to Detective Morrison. He's reviewing now. Hold tight. It was something, but was it enough? Through the funeral home windows, I could see Marcus greeting arrivals, playing the bereaved son with Oscar-worthy commitment. Nicole Harrison stood nearby, having somehow inserted herself into the family gathering, her hand occasionally touching Marcus's arm in fake comfort. We could still run, John offered one last time. Get you somewhere safe. And let them get away. With murder. I shook my head. Dorothy deserves better. Beth appeared at the entrance with the children, looking confused. John had told her there was a family emergency, but hadn't explained the full truth. How could he? How do you tell your wife that your brother murdered your mother? It's time, I said, checking my phone once more. The flash drive Tommy had given me was tucked in my jacket pocket, a digital insurance policy. Whatever happens, don't leave me alone with him. We entered together, the funeral home's hushed atmosphere enveloping us like a shroud. Dorothy's casket dominated the main viewing room, surrounded by flowers that couldn't mask the wrongness of her being there. She should have lived another decade, should have taken that cruise, should have seen her great-grandchildren grow up. Eleanor. Marcus materialized beside me, his hand finding my elbow with proprietorial firmness. So glad you made it. Mother would have wanted you here. Of course, I managed, fighting the urge to pull away from his touch. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Nicole has something special planned for later. A toast to Mother's memory. You'll want to stay for that. The threat was clear. Whatever they planned would happen here, publicly, disguised as an accident brought on by grief. A poisoned drink, perhaps, or something more subtle. My death would be witnessed by dozens, and no one would suspect murder. Miriam approached, her face grave. She caught my eye and shook her head slightly. The police weren't coming, at least not yet. Something had delayed them, some bureaucratic tangle or need for additional evidence. We were on our own. The viewing proceeded with agonizing normalcy. Friends and distant relatives shared memories of Dorothy, each story a reminder of the life stolen from her. I stood by the casket, accepting condolences while hyper-aware of Marcus and Nicole's movements. They circled like sharks, always keeping me in sight. Such a loss, said Mrs. Patterson from Dorothy's Bridge Club. She was telling me just last week about her plans to endow a scholarship fund. So much good left undone. Each conversation added to the weight of injustice. Dorothy's dreams, her plans, her generous spirit, all extinguished for money. I found myself gripping the edge of the casket, anger burning through my fear. Are you all right? John appeared at my side, Beth and the children having been safely deposited with other family members. No, I admitted quietly, but I will be. One way or another, this ends tonight. At 7:30, Marcus called for attention. The room quieted as he stood before Dorothy's casket, Nicole positioned strategically nearby with a tray of champagne glasses. Thank you all for coming, Marcus began, his voice thick with false emotion. Mother would have been touched by this outpouring of love. She always said family was everything, and seeing you all here proves how right she was. I watched Nicole distribute glasses, noting how she kept track of specific ones. When she approached me, her smile was sharp as a blade. For the toast, she said, pressing a glass into my hand. Don't worry, it's a special vintage, Dorothy's favorite. The champagne looked identical to everyone else's, but I knew better. Whatever they'd added would be tasteless, odorless, undetectable, until it was too late. Around the room, family members raised their glasses, waiting for Marcus to continue. Before we toast, Marcus said, his eyes finding mine across the room. I wanted to share something Mother told me recently. She said the secret to a life was knowing when to let go. Tonight, we let her go. And perhaps, his gaze never wavered, we learned to let go of other things as well. To Dorothy, someone called out, and the room echoed with the sentiment. I raised my glass with everyone else, bringing it to my lips. Time seemed to slow as I faced the moment of choice. Drink and die, or refuse and reveal that I knew their plan. But there was a third option. Wait! I called out, my voice cutting through the murmur of voices. Before we drink, I have something to share, something Dorothy wanted everyone to know. Marcus's face darkened, but he couldn't stop me without causing a scene. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. Dorothy left a message, I announced, connecting my phone to the funeral home's speaker system with trembling fingers. She recorded it 3 days before she died. Before Marcus could move, Dorothy's voice filled the room. This is Dorothy Winters, making this recording of my own free will. I've discovered that my son Marcus has been stealing from me with the help of a bank employee named Nicole Harrison. I confronted him tonight, and his response terrified me. He said, and I quote, "You should be more careful, Mom. Accidents happen to elderly people all the time. I believe my life is in danger. If something happens to me, please investigate. My son Marcus Winters for murder." The room erupted. Glasses dropped, shattering on the floor. Someone screamed. Marcus lunged toward me, but John intercepted him, the brothers crashing into a flower arrangement. "You killed her!" John shouted, pinning Marcus against the wall. You killed our mother! Nicole tried to flee, but Miriam, proving that age hadn't, dimmed her reflexes, tripped her with a strategically placed foot. The younger woman went down hard, champagne glasses scattering. Call 911, someone yelled, and suddenly everyone was on their phones. I backed away from the chaos, my untouched champagne glass still in my hand. Marcus broke free from John and advanced on me, his mask completely gone now, replaced by desperate fury. You ruined everything, he snarled, reaching for my throat dot. But before he could touch me, the doors burst open. Detective Morrison entered with a squad of uniformed officers, their timing finely, blessedly perfect. Marcus Winters, Nicole Harrison, you're under arrest for the murder of Dorothy Winters, Morrison announced. We have video evidence of the crime, financial records showing motive, and now this recording establishing premeditation. As the officers cuffed them, Marcus's eyes found mine one last time. The hatred there was absolute, but underneath it, I saw something else. Defeat. The perfect crime he'd planned had been undone by the women he'd underestimated. His mother who'd prepared for her own murder, his aunt who'd preserved the evidence, and his wife who'd witnessed it all. The champagne, I told Detective Morrison, carefully handing him my glass. Test this one. I think they tried to poison me. He took it gingerly, signaling for evidence bags. Later testing would reveal a lethal dose of potassium cyanide, enough to cause death within minutes. Nicole had prepared my murder, even as she distributed drinks for Dorothy's memorial dot. The next hour passed in a blur of police statements, evidence collection, and shocked family members struggling to process the truth. Beth held her children close, finally understanding why John had been acting strangely. Miriam sat with Dorothy's friends, comforting them even as tears streamed down her own face. You did it, John said, finding me in a quiet corner as the chaos began to settle. You got justice for Mom. We did it, I corrected. All of us. Dorothy most of all. She knew what he was capable of and prepared for it. Through the window, I watched them load Marcus and Nicole into separate police cars. Marcus had stopped struggling, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He'd killed for money he would never touch, destroyed a family that might have loved him, and ended his own life as surely as he'd ended his mother, quote, S. dot. The funeral director approached apologetically. I'm so sorry, but we need to close soon. Perhaps we could reschedule the viewing for tomorrow? No, Miriam said firmly, joining us. Dorothy's had enough of this circus. We'll have a private burial tomorrow, just family. The real family, she added, pointedly excluding Marcus from that category. As we prepared to leave, I stood one last time by Dorothy's casket. She looked peaceful, despite everything. I thought about our last real conversation, when she'd told me about wanting to change her will, about trusting me to understand what was best. I understood, I whispered to her still form, and I kept my promise. John drove me home, not to the house I'd shared with Marcus, but to a hotel where I'd be safe while lawyers sorted out the wreckage of my marriage. The house felt tainted now, every room holding memories of deception and danger. What will you do? John asked as we sat in the hotel parking lot. Divorce him, obviously. Testify at the trial. Try to rebuild. I managed a weak smile. Your mother left me a small bequest in her original will. Enough to start over. She loved you, John said simply. Said you were the daughter she never had? I think she knew you'd be the one to save her, even if she couldn't save herself. That night, alone in an impersonal hotel room, I finally allowed myself to cry. For Dorothy, who died knowing her son was her killer. For the family torn apart by greed. Even for Marcus, who'd chosen money over mother, inheritance over love. The trial took 6 months. Marcus and Nicole were both convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and attempted murder for their plan to poison me. The security footage Tommy had recovered was devastating to their defense, showing not just the murder, but their cold planning afterward. Marcus never admitted guilt, maintaining his innocence even as the evidence buried him. But Nicole cracked, providing details in exchange for a lighter sentence. She'd been his lover for 2 years, their relationship built on shared greed and contempt for those they saw as obstacles to wealth. I divorced Marcus from prison, the proceedings swift given the circumstances. The house was sold, the proceeds going to Dorothy's planned charities. I couldn't bear to profit from her death, even indirectly. On the anniversary of Dorothy's death, I met John and his family at her grave. Miriam was there too, along with some of Dorothy's dearest friends. We brought flowers and stories, celebrating the woman she'd been rather than mourning how she'd died. I hired a new financial advisor, John told me afterward. Someone Miriam vetted thoroughly. We're setting up the scholarship fund Mom wanted. She'd like that, I said, thinking of Dorothy's generous spirit. As we walked back to our cars, Miriam pulled me aside. I have something for you, she said, pressing an envelope into my hands. From Dorothy. She gave it to me months ago, said to give it to you if anything happened to her. I opened it in my car, my hands shaking. Inside was a short note in Dorothy's careful handwriting. My dear Eleanor, if you're reading this, then my fears have come true. But I want you to know that I don't blame you for whatever happens. You brought light into my final years, showed me that Marcus hadn't corrupted everything good in this world. I've left you more than money in my will. I've left you my mother's pearl necklace, the one you always admired. Wear it, and remember that sometimes the greatest strength comes from seeming weakness. You taught me that. Be happy, my dear. Live the life I won't get to finish. And know that somewhere, somehow, I'm watching over you with all the love my son never deserved. Dorothy, I clutched the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Through everything, the fear, the danger, the pursuit of justice. I'd focused on Dorothy the victim, but she'd been so much more. She'd been a woman who faced her killer with courage, who'd prepared for her own murder with determination, to see justice done, who'd loved me like a daughter, even as her son plotted against her. I wear her pearls now, not as a reminder of that terrible night, but as a symbol of strength. Dorothy Winters died on October 28th, murdered by a son whose greed outweighed his humanity. But her legacy lives on in scholarships for deserving students, in the family members who learned to spot the warning signs of abuse, in a daughter-in-law who found the courage to stand up to a killer. Marcus is serving life without parole. He writes me sometimes, letters full of accusations and self-pity that I burn unread. Nicole got 25 years and will be an old woman when she's released. The bank she worked for implemented new security measures, Dorothy's case becoming a cautionary tale in financial institutions across the country. I remarried last year to a kind man who knows my whole story and loves me not despite it, but because it showed him who I really am. We live quietly, simply, finding joy in small moments that Dorothy would have appreciated. Sometimes I dream about that night in the closet, frozen with terror as I watched Marcus murder his mother. But more often, I dream about Dorothy in her reading chair, smiling as she told me stories, trusting me with her fears and her hopes. She trusted me to seek justice. And I did. She trusted me to survive, and I have. Most importantly, she trusted me to remember her not as a victim, but as a woman who loved fiercely, lived fully, and faced death with the courage of someone who knew their truth would outlive their killer's lies. Every October 28th, I visit her grave alone. I tell her about my life, about John's children growing up strong and kind, about Miriam still fierce in her 80s. I tell her about the students her scholarship has helped, young women who might have given up without her posthumous support. And I always, before I leave, I make the same promise. Your story isn't over, Dorothy. Not while those who love you remember. Not while justice stands. Not while your pearls rest against my heart, reminding me that the greatest courage sometimes comes from the quietest voices. The closet door closed that night on one chapter of my life. But Dorothy's death, terrible as it was, opened another, one where truth triumphs over lies, where love outlasts greed, and where a mother's faith in her daughter-in-law became the key to justice. Marcus thought he'd committed the perfect murder. He was wrong. There's no such thing as a perfect crime when love stands witness. Dorothy knew that. And now, so do I.